In this lesson, we will discuss what it takes to create emphasis in a composition. Okay, so I'm just right over here under my fifth principle, and we're looking at emphasis example 1 right there. So let's talk about what emphasis is. Emphasis is the most important part or emphasized part of the composition. This is going to refer to where the viewer's eye finally comes to rest. So earlier we've talked about compositions that have different elements that are going to drive your viewer's eye. This is where the viewer's eye is going to sit. So some compositions may not have emphasis. They may just want you to work kind of around in a circle looking at all of the elements. And then sometimes you really want to have an obvious focal point. So it just depends on what kind of composition and what kind of mood you're going for. So in this particular composition that we're looking at here, we have a really clear example of what's being emphasized. So I'm going to just play that through for you so you can see what that looks like. And obviously, the emphasized part of this composition is that number. We have lots of different elements working together to emphasize our focal point. So one of those is this kind of ring here. It's almost creating a sort of stage for our number that we have here in the middle. And then besides all of these other elements kind of just pointing towards that number, we also have this flashy circle that kind of just rotates around our number as the number counts down. The number is also one of the only things that really visually changes weight in the composition. Even though our camera moves, all of our other elements are really just animating in place, while our number is actually changing from number to number as it does that countdown. And that animation in and of itself is going to attract interest in a viewer's eye. We probably don't even need all of these elements, but they're simply there to continue to reinforce this is the countdown, this is what we want you to be looking at, this number here. And another thing that helps to reinforce this is a little bit of proximity, what we talked about earlier. All of these other elements feel like they're further away, they're out of focus, and so the thing we want to be focusing on is right here in the middle. So you can kind of begin to see, as we've talked about several of these elements, that they all sort of play off of one another, and some of them are used as vehicles to drive home another point. So this is using proximity as a way to emphasize the focal point. So the emphasis is merely a tool to make something the most important thing in your composition. That's really all that we're talking about. Now, let's talk about our other example of emphasis. I'm going to double click this second thing here. Now, this is a little bit different example. We still are using almost a container as a way to emphasize this. So we have our television. Now earlier we had sort of a stage as emphasis, but there's something else important here that we didn't see quite as blatantly in our last composition, and that's the color temperature. The color temperature inside of this video that's playing in our TV is so much brighter than everything here on the outside. Besides the setup of the shot itself, what's contained here inside of the TV is definitely the most emphasized thing. And definitely a big part of that is the way that the camera interacts with this. We start out so closely zoomed in, you can really just not look at anything else besides what's going on in here. And then as the camera pulls back, we slowly are revealing what else is in this scene. And even though your peripheral vision really is just taking in the wallpaper and the TV, you're so focused on what's going on inside of the composition. So keeping that in mind, the color and the way that the camera is set up is definitely driving home this focal point. Now, whenever we talk about emphasis, one of the big things to think about, especially that has been used in this composition, is that less is more. Your eyes are by nature going to be lazy, and too much going on in a composition is going to be overwhelming, and then nothing is really important. So by emphasizing this simply with the camera angle and the color that they've used, you see that we have a really important center here. So this is all I'm focusing on. And really, I could have come in here, maybe hung some posters on the wall. You know, there could be more elements in the composition, but it's been intentionally left to just feel a little more reserved and held back, so that the most important thing is going to be what's going on inside of this television. So in this lesson, we learned that emphasis is the most important part of a composition, and we can combine elements as well as purposeful animation to make our emphasized focal point stronger.